It doesn't seal it for me because Miriam was another popular name, and it's just another version of Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's ever going to put, a title on these coffers saying, here lies Jesus, the Son of God. So he's going to have serious difficulty proving it. And what his DNA evidence is to prove that it's God's Son, I have no idea, because I don't know what God's DNA is.
Yeah.
So without the DNA structure of God himself, I don't know how we can prove that this is Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. I really, if it does prove it, fascinating history and great stuff in some respects. But if it isn't true, it makes no difference. It's still an incredible find as it was back in the 80s when it was first discovered. The other thing, of course, is that archaeologists are saying is that these tombs were in some of the most expensive areas around Jerusalem, and that the family of Jesus was supposedly poor. So somebody had to cough up a lot of money to put them in there. So he would have to circumnavigate that issue too.
Yeah.
What's your take?
I don't know. I mean,
it was me then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think as you say, I found this fascinating. But beyond that, I mean, what I like to do is I kind of like to connect all of this with the fact that if, as claimed by the article, that Mary and Jesus had a son that was called Judah, I think the article stated.
Yeah.
The interesting aspect, I think, becomes when you consider if Judah himself had a son and so forth, and there actually is a bloodline that we can tie together with, that there actually is a bloodline alive today that actually can claim, I guess then by DNA or whatever, that they are related to Jesus. Yeah. I mean, that's where it becomes interesting, I think.
Well, the first point I'd make is how old is this boy or man or Judah in this coffer? So was he of child siring age? So that'd be the first thing, because if he's a 12-year-old boy, it's not likely that he had children. And I haven't seen in the press releases anything about his age, so I don't know about that.
Yeah.
The second point I'd make is that we're talking 2,000 years ago. A generation is roughly about 20 years. Every generation, a family can have 2 or more children. Now, so divide 2,000 by 20, we get an awful lot of years. We get an awful lot of generations, sorry. Times that by how many children could possibly have. We have millions of children around the globe that are a part of this bloodline.
Yeah.
Not just one sacred bloodline protected by a priory that may have existed or may not.
Sure, yeah.
In the mind of some French priest who conned people out of money. So I don't know.
Yes, I mean, okay. So do you want to kind of go in that direction? I mean, I guess you are referring to Sonia here.
I'm not well liked for the fact that I don't actually believe that the Prior of Zion or Sion is necessarily around today.
Okay. Yeah.
For obvious reasons. That it's a very, very popular concept.
It is.
Neither do I have a disbelief that it's around. It could very well be. There certainly was a Prior of Zion because one was created back in the medieval times.
Sure.
That's standard history, and you'll find that in most crusade books that was the case. But they kind of died out. They no longer existed. That said, secret societies that supposedly stopped existing have now been discovered, because I personally discovered one not long ago, and it's going to be in a book in June called Secret Societies, which is coming out. So, there's no reason why they couldn't exist. But I know that this one that I found do exist because I actually met them and went to their watering hole in Berlin.
All right.
So we can talk about that story if you wish.
I'd love to dive into that. Please tell us.
Well, what it was, I was researching, obviously, secret societies for the book, and I knew a few people in, you've heard of the Golden Dawn.
Sure, sure.
And there's a friend I've got in the Golden Dawn, because, they're not secret, they're all over the internet, so they're not a secret society.
Sure.
They may keep a few things secret, but you only have to join to find out. So I was talking to him, and I was saying, I've been reading about this group called the Holy Vem, or Vengeance, which was around in Germany, Westphalia, which you may be aware of. An order very much like the Teutonic Knights or the Templars or the Knights of St. John, etc., that was set up, supposedly, to issue vengeance on the people that were robbing people on the highways. So very similar to the Templars in that respect, protecting pilgrims on the highway.
Yeah, yeah.
And the stories go that they set themselves up, and they got permission from the Catholic authorities to do this, and they had local judges who were members of the order. They were like the Grand Master, the judges. And if they ever found anybody, caught anybody, they would take them off into the woods at night or to a cave, so the story goes, and issue judgment. And 9 times out of 10, the judgment meant basically that you were found guilty and killed. So not a nice bunch by the sound of it. And they the standard history of them is that they kind of disappeared around the 15th, 16th century and were never seen again until Adolf Hitler decided that he would use them to issue vengeance upon the Jews. Which implies that they were still around, and he knew so. Well, we all know that Hitler and Hess and the other people were deeply involved, deeply interested in the occult, that which is hidden, and deeply interested in secret societies. The Nazi Party itself was a secret society before it became a government. As most secret societies, most governments and religions are secret societies before they begin, even Christianity was. So he used these Holy Vem to issue judgments upon Jews. And then the story goes that they ended after the Second World War. Again, they whittled away into nothingness. So I spoke to my friend in the Golden Dawn, and he says, well, let me make a few questions to people he knows in Germany to see if there are any people who are still around. Any of the older people, because, it's not beyond the realms of fantasy to think that there may still be some of the older ones still alive.
Of course, yeah.
So he came back to me a couple of days later and said, yeah, they're still there, Phil, and they're quite happy to meet you. So, with some trepidation, I got on a plane and went to Berlin. And it's so like a John le Carré novel that it's incredible. I was to meet them outside the Berlin Dome, the museum, and to look for 2 men who would come up and they'd know what I look like, because there's pictures of me all over the place. So,
sure, yeah.
I stood there waiting, and two elderly gentlemen came up and introduced themselves, dressed in their dark suits, and there was a waiting black Mercedes. So they kind of said, right, let's go for a drink and we'll tell you all about ourselves, because we think it's time to raise our heads above the parapet again and let the world know that we're here. I said, fair enough, I'm the man, I'll let them know you're here. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with you.
Exactly.
So I got into the black Mercedes, and we drove outside of Berlin to the outer limits, and we ended up at a small kind of bar, which at the front seems perfectly normal, but we went into the back rooms, which opened up, and there are pictures of Hitler and Hess and Goebbels and Goering all over the walls. And there's a bar at the end, and there's these, there's a lot of blue-eyed, blonde-eyed boys in Sweden, but they were in Germany, in this place, and they were young. There were several elderly gentlemen that were obviously old enough to be from the old days, but a lot of them were young. And they were certainly paying a lot of reverence to the image of Hitler. And I knew that they were them because of the research that I'd done. They turned, when we sat down to eat, we had lunch, they turned their forks and knives inwards, which is a sign to anybody else in the room. It's a symbol that they are them. So they know their stuff, they know their symbols, and a few other things that they did as well. So it kind of confirmed it, and it was a fascinating but very terrifying day. And like I say, I put the whole story in the book. But so they supposedly didn't exist, or gone out of existence like the Priory. So it may well be that the Priory is still in existence.
Yeah.
Whether Leonardo da Vinci and these other people were in it, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
There's no evidence that I can see that's real evidence. There's a lot of inference.
Yeah.
There's a lot of joining up dots and big gaps in between for me, personally.
Yeah. This is a story that I guess is slowly coming together, and as you said, as you have a background in spin, I mean, I no doubt you are able to pick up on, I guess, a lot of spin that you can see just from, researching on the internet or whatever, regarding secret societies and so forth. There must be a tremendous kind of difficulty to wade through it all, right?
You could say that, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The guy who actually supposedly was knowledgeable about this, Berenger Saunier, his background is so murky that, if it was somebody that we knew today, we'd say we didn't trust a word that you'd say anyway. So why should we trust the things that he says now? And then we move on to Plantard, and it gets even murkier. And the people around him are so murky. There's so much. It so easily could be an entire route for Plantard to just justify his claim to the throne of France or whatever else it was that he wanted. But he certainly got all the attention he desired, and there's a lot of people around the globe that do want attention. Me personally, if I could write books and live in the House of Hebrides in a crofter's cottage, I would do. It's fascinating that you mentioned Plantard, because this obviously was a guy I wanted to address a little bit. But in regards to another guy, have you ever heard of someone called Prince Nicholas de Vere von Drakenberg or whatever? Oh no! Do we have to?
Why do you say that?
Well, can I say I refer you to the above?
Okay.
What I've just said.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Similar.
Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. It's perfectly fine. Again, I guess a lot of people, I guess, are interested in claiming the throne, as it were, to whatever, or descendants of Jesus Christ. And I don't know if you know this, but I've heard that Catholic law states that the Pope actually is the vicar of Christ, or the one who takes the place of Jesus. So in the meantime, when Jesus isn't here, so forth, the one who stands in his place is the Pope. And
yes, it was a much later addition into the Catholic Creed.
Okay, yeah.
Originally he was St. Peter's man on earth. Right, the keys of the temple were given to St. Peter, and so the Pope was him.
Sure.
But it was a later deification, if you like, of the Pope, the Father. I think it was around about the Second Crusade that again a lot of it was used for propaganda.
Yeah.
To raise an army to go and get Jerusalem back.
Yeah.
There's so much propaganda going off in the Catholic Church that how on earth anybody can see any truth in it is a good laugh, really. I was in Rome not 2 days after the new Pope was inaugurated. And I was in the Vatican to do some research for the Ark. I was actually there, and they'd allowed me in and to see some paperwork. I didn't get anywhere, but across the room, Benedict walked, not far away from me. And it was quite a shock to actually see him, and all this entourage. And he turned for one split second and looked straight at me. And I kid you not, I am not a man who is afraid of any spiritual realm or anything else like that. But his eyes, man, if the devil ever had any eyes, he's got them.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a real laugh. But what really made me laugh is this is 2 days after